Welcome back to Cult Pop. I'm Jim Hall, and with me now is Ben Tanzer, author of Lucky Man, a fantastic novel. Ben, thanks so much for being with us today, and I want to congratulate you on a fantastic debut novel.
Well, thanks so much. I really, really appreciate your interest in the book and this chance to talk to you about it.
Ben, I've got to tell you, we've had a chance to talk here extensively before you came on, and I told you just how impressed I am with the novel. It reminds me, it's a coming-of-age story, 4 young men coming out of high school, each dealing with their own personal demons, personal issues, and following them along into college and their lives. And it really spoke to me much like many years ago Stephen King's Stand By Me did. But with this book, it spoke more to my generation and when I was growing up, and I think you just did an amazing job. Tell us a little bit about Lucky Man and kind of your inspiration for the book.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Hey, I want to say, by the way, I really appreciate the Stand By Me reference. It was not one of the books I was thinking of when I wrote this, but, you know, when I was the age of the characters in the novel, that was one of those novellas books I absolutely loved. I mean, I must have read it 15, 20 times. So, you know, Jim, you're the first person who mentioned it, but I'm a little humbled by that. You know, my book is focusing on 4 friends, slightly older than those characters, sort of loosely between their ages of 18 and 22, 23. It follows them in the waning days of high school till the first couple of years out of college. And, you know, my idea was to try to create a story where you had 4 friends or characters who are so close, they're almost of one brain. And the challenge becomes, you know, how do these characters sort of individuate, or how do they create their own individual personalities? You know, simultaneously, I was really interested in trying to tell a story about really one of my themes I come back to quite a bit, which is how do people cope, you know? How do they cope when they're from fractured families, or when they're dealing with issues of sexual orientation, when they're exposed to violence? I mean, how do people cope with things? That's something that's a real fascination of mine. So I thought, okay, how would 4 people do that? So one of the things I tried to do was create a book where you could actually have 4 first-person accounts, 4 protagonists, I guess. And so what I did was each chapter rotates from one character to the next, and they either pick up the story where the last one left off, or they tell their own version. And then I further tried to break the book into 4 sections over the years, and each section sort of highlights the struggle of one of the characters. And that was my intent. You can tell me whether that worked or not, but that's what I tried to do.
I thought it worked real well, Ben. In fact, the 4 different sections, breaking it in like that, and the timelines and moving ahead and stuff, I definitely really enjoyed the book. And like I say, maybe growing up around the same time as you did and these young men, I could really identify with it. And it wasn't it wasn't just cutesy stuff. There's a lot of serious issues dealt with, sexual orientation, drug abuse, things like that were handled really well. But also it all rang true. That's one thing I really liked about it. But I loved your pop culture references and just things, everything from the Twilight Zone to just the kids having, when the guys would have their conversations, it reminded me of conversations I would have when I was that age, coming out of high school, and just kind of stuff that would seem so important to us in life at that time, and the issues and problems we would deal with that maybe now as men in our 30s and 40s, you start to think, well, God, why was I ever so worried about that? But at 18, 19, 20, these are some of the most important issues of a young person's life. I think you did a brilliant job of bringing that stuff to light.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. You know, it's funny because I've read before, and I'm not a real good expert on generations. You know, you and I, Jim, I think fit into sort of the tail end or the middle of Generation X. You know, that shorthand, pop culture is a real shorthand for our age group. And so, you know, in my head, I don't necessarily write for any particular group. I sort of write the stories that make sense to me. But it is funny to hear people respond to the pop culture stuff because that's so second nature for me. Good or bad, I don't know. But certainly I spend a lot of time thinking about it. And, you know, I think in this book particularly, and probably like your experiences talking to friends, you know, it's not just a shorthand, but there's a certain metaphor. Like, you know, if I talk about the Twilight Zone, that invokes something for people. They know that that means there's a situation. It's a little hard to figure out. The outcome's going to be murky. You know, maybe Telly Savalas is going to pop up. You know, if I invoke Greatest American Hero, which is a show from our youth, you know, my children will probably never see it. people sort of say, oh, Greatest American Hero, that was that guy. So, I hope it serves that purpose, kind of like music does in a movie. You hear a certain song, it invokes a certain feeling. But again, it's not always a conscious decision. I mean, sometimes I think, how would this character do this? Well, this character would reference the Grateful Dead, or this character would reference The Breakfast Club, or hopefully even a better movie.
Well, Ben, one thing I wanted to hit on is the amazing, the book was fantastic, but your gonzo style of advertising the book was really fantastic. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you're really generous, and I guess this is an extension of that too. Very early on, my publisher, and I'd love to give him a quick shout out, Steve Laffler is a graphic novelist, and Manx Media is his imprint, and he was really interested in doing a novel, and mine was available, and I've known him for a long time, and he has treated the book so wonderfully. And early on, it was clear we were not going to have a big marketing budget. Obviously, but early on I was also sort of fascinated with how independent musicians, I guess particularly, market themselves in a world where there's a lot of clutter, and that's how I sort of think about it. There's a lot of clutter. I like my book, but there's a lot of great books out there, and so early on I thought, man, how do people market things? What do other people do? And it sort of liberated me to try some things I would have been maybe embarrassed to do without a really good reason. So very early on, my publisher, Steve, was like, you have to have a blog, which of course there's 4,000 new blogs a day. But so I started with the blog as sort of a platform, but then I really used that to sort of experiment with other things. I thought, I can create YouTube videos. I can create I can create a MySpace account, all these things I wouldn't have done. Goodreads is a great social networking site. Dunkin' Donuts held a contest, and they asked people to sort of comment on what keeps America running, how do they keep America running, and clearly it's an effort to market Dunkin' Donuts, but I thought, there's a way to work Lucky Man into that kind of video. So I submitted that to the contest. This week Starbucks is seeking a new original idea so they can get more entrepreneurial again and more grassroots, and so they're asking for people's suggestions, and I don't necessarily go to Starbucks, but I said, hey, why don't you sell Lucky Man? So someone's going to read that. Maybe it'll resonate with someone. One thing I'd like to say, and I appreciate your thoughts on this, one of my goals, particularly with the blog, was to almost create this idea that Lucky Man is a product people have to have, and that Lucky Man is just one of many products that are going to come out of this corporation. The corporation was originally called Lucky Man Inc., and then I reframed it, I rebranded it as TBWCYL Inc., because companies are always rebranding themselves, and I thought, let's pretend we're a huckster. Let's pretend this is the Simpsons episode where they sell the monorail, and let's say, this book is going to change your life, and the blog is this blog will change your life. So there was always this idea I would create a character that would say, Lucky Man is something you have to have. Lucky Man may truly make a difference. And everything fed off of that. All the videos sort of feed off of that concept. It's really been a lot of fun. And I don't think they sell books. And I realized very early on that didn't matter to me. I mean, I want to sell books, of course. But what I really want to do is, enjoy myself and entertain myself and sort of try to live like a working artist. And that's where these pieces have come from. I don't know that they do anything, but they create a sort of, maybe create a sense of buzz, but minimally allow me to meet other people like you, and certainly allow me to have a lot of fun in those hours when I really want to be thinking artistically.